Dúir se gaomh a chairde agus a chamrádaí. Fáilte róg an seo. Is me an Punkin Jareg. Welcome all. A red Fenian punk, among other things, often less repeatable. Just going to talk about current state of affairs and the nightmare dystopia world that we're in. As is well known, a group of people, activists who protested against the ongoing genocide of Palestinians, which has been going on since 1948, approximately, with the Nakba, suddenly intensified after the 2023 October 7th attacks by that terrible group Hamas. Well, talk about them. But this group of people who sprayed a bit of red paint onto some jet planes that were being sent over to contribute to this genocide have recently been prescribed as a terrorist organization. Around about the same time that the Al-Nusra, new president of Syria, who's a member of Al-Nusra, which is an associated group with groups like Al-Qaeda, has been taken off the terror list. The crimes of that group is fairly well known, but if you want to Google him, by all means do. You'll find a plethora of very, very nasty things that fucker's been up to, and he's not a terrorist anymore. But a bunch of people who spray a bit of red paint onto some plane engines and so on and so forth in an airfield are classed as terrorists. Now, to protest against this, a bunch of people are gathered in London and declared that they thought that this was rightly a stupid, ridiculous thing. And many of them have been arrested. I think it was approximately 60 of them were arrested, including a blind man in a wheelchair, including retired teachers. I believe one of them was a 90-year-old. There's been an awful lot of very defenseless people who are about as much danger and about as much of a fucking terrorist as a bloody bumblebee. Jesus, even a bumblebee's more dangerous than that. They can sting you at least. These people wouldn't even do that, for fuck's sake. If these people are charged, and if they're being charged with terror offences or supporting terrorism, if convicted, they could be sent to prison for up to 14 fucking years. People say that Britain is this, like, mother of all democracies. I mean, if you come from an Irish background, like I do, or, if you come from an Indian or Pakistani, like a Punjabi or Bengali background, one has to just think of the Irish potato famine, I call it, the Irish Holocaust, or Ungort the More, the Great Hunger. One can also think of the Amritsar massacre of about approximately 100 years ago. And then there's the Bengal famine, largely instigated by that delightful British patriot, Winston Churchill. That fucker who also sent the Black and Tans into Ireland. Look them up on Google if you don't know who they are. And those Black and Tans were later sent over to Palestine, which is one of the many reasons that the Irish, including myself, are deeply sympathetic to Palestine. The same bastards were used to brutally oppress my grandparents' generation that were used later on to brutally oppress the current Palestinian generation's great-grandparents or so on and so forth, or great-great-grandparents, who suffered at the hands of the same fuckers. Supporting Palestine Action, which is prescribed, it labels you a terrorist, but standing outside a bunch of really shitty hotels that are being used to house people who are seeking to escape from war and famine and things like domestic abuse or whatever, they're being basically picketed by so-called protesters from usually affiliated with groups like the English Defence League, Pegida, and so on and so forth, or just supporters of or sympathisers of these fascist groups. They're standing outside these places, intimidating people, throwing abuse at them, and the only thing stopping them from getting arrested is the threat of arrest by the fucking coppers. A year ago, approximately, just about a year ago, they went on the rampage because of some murder that happened to some seriously mentally unstable or seriously unhinged person who was born in Cardiff, but his family came from Rwanda. They used this to stir up racist hatred. The person wasn't even from a foreign country. He was actually born in the United Kingdom, in Wales, in Cymru. This sparked a bunch of fascist, racist rabble-rousers who deliberately capitalized on the relentless frustration of working class people, and they stirred up a racist pogrom. These pogroms went up and down the country. In Sunderland, just down the road from here, the Citizens Advice Bureau was set on fire. There was numerous instances of Greg's shops being looted, which was kind of embarrassingly, vaguely comical, and various other acts of violence. Now, among other things that they did as well, on top of that, they in one particular town, I forget which one exactly it was, but you can find it in news sections from 12 months ago. One or two instances, they crowds of rabid fascist thugs went around to various hotels, like these cesspit hotels that they use as like reception centres. They're more like de facto prisons. They went around to them. In one instance, they barricaded people inside and tried to burn the place down. Threat racist chants, abuse, hate-filled rhetoric, and basically attempted murder and arson. This is not classed as terrorism either, but putting a bit of red paint onto a fucking plane is. Now, I hope to Christ these fucking poor bastards that were arrested in London do not get charged, because I know what it's like to be arrested. I've had it happen to me. It's not very nice. I've been arrested for similar unpolitical demonstrations. I spent 11 hours in a fucking police cell in Newcastle and jumped up charges of conspiracy to commit violent disorder, it was at the time. Google the Newcastle 14. You'll find out about that. I was amongst them. And now at the same time, God, it makes me puke talking about this bunch of cunts, especially that fucking smug lead singer. That nauseating West British, East Yankee, supposedly Irish Free State overrated fucking pop group called U2 have finally, after years now of genocide, have finally decided to actually make a statement. And as typical of them, the usual, like their fucking terrible songs and their bloody stupid lyrics that Bono writes, it's vague, it's obscure, it's ambiguous, and it says nothing. All that fucking prick. Fuck these guys, all of them, but especially that fucking Shoneen piece of shit, Bono, who apparently, as I understand it, my friend Lumpen Celt confirms this, that fucker in his youth was a member of the Fine Gael youth wing. He doesn't talk about that these days. For those of you who don't know who Fine Gael are, they are the right-wing party of of the two mainstream parties in Ireland, both of whom are right-wing and neoliberal. Fine Gael are the more right-wing, more sort of laissez-faire neoliberal capitalist party, slightly more secular, debatably more secular than Fianna Fáil, who used to pretend to be more left-wing. Their roots come from the Civil War and partition and all that, and I won't go into that now. But Fine Gael are generally despised, especially amongst working class people, and migrants and immigrants and so on, LGBTQ people and so on. They're generally despised, even though at one point they did have a gay leader. But they're generally highly looked down upon by most people in Ireland. They're essentially West British. They were the party that was against the declaration of the Irish Republic in 1949, and they've basically been West Brits to the core ever since. Even more so than Fianna Fáil, who've sold their soul many a times over. Bono used to be a member of the youth wing of this. And this would explain why he is so judgmental and apologising relentlessly to Britain and to the USA for these loony lefties in the north, these nasty terrorist Republicans like the Irish Republican Army and their one-time political wing Sinn Féin when it was the Provisional IRA, the Irish National Liberation Army, and their political wing of the old day, which was the Irish Republican Socialist Party. He spent his time condemning these people and apologising. The only one that outdid that fucker was Dolores O'Riordan, who wrote that awful song Zombie. I've covered this before, I'm not going to go over it again. Ach, Pishgil, eh? Inu, today, that fucker has made a statement basically saying, both sides bad. Israel just needs to free itself of the, what was it now? What did he put it? The slavery or the enslavement or something to that effect of the Netanyahu government. You mean the fascist? They mean the more overtly fascist party of that fucking settler colony regime? Is that what you mean, Bono? Eh? Yeah, Paul Hewson, very Irish name. You can usually tell that the Irish right wing, not least those maggots on the streets attacking asylum seekers and refugees and general immigrants, are not descended from the Irish Gael most of the time. Some of them are. They're bootlicking cunts. Most of them are descended from colonial settlers. They've got names like Hewson and Geldof and Croft and Peake. Well, Ian Peake, he's English anyway, but they're not really the grassroots of Ireland that they claim to be. I digress with that one. But anyway, Bono and U2 try to backpedal because they've always been ones for jumping on bandwagons and trying to look like they're these caring, sharing, Irish do-gooders, and they're an embarrassing laughingstock to the Irish diaspora here, I can tell you that. But they like to put themselves out there as these loving, caring, pious, righteous activists. You know what I mean? Yeah, right. We really care so much about those starving black people in Africa. Pogmo hun gwela, chanushtu. Go suicide fiend. You're about as sincere as a fucking Bible preacher who gets caught with his fucking pants down in a fucking with a bunch of underage boys. You cunt. Fucking stick your fucking opinion up your ass. We've seen you at the Nova Festival doing your mawkish tribute to people in October the 7th. Admittedly, there may have been some civilian victims among them. Some of them, however, were IDF soldiers, war criminals themselves. I'm not going to say that was a glorious thing, and it was a bloody awful thing. War is fucking hell. Resistance is not pretty. But you're sitting there licking their ass and you said fuck all about the people who've been butchered, slaughtered, burned alive, had their families massacred in front of them, then got massacred themselves or murdered murdered themselves. You didn't say a jack shit about this until yesterday. And suddenly you decide to try and pretend that you care about humanity. Bono, you're an old cunt. Fuck off. Please go away. I shouldn't use such crude and vulgar language, but hey, it's a crude and vulgar situation, and I don't see why I should be sitting here being polite about it. I have no time for fucking pricks and West Brits like them. I have no time for fucking flag shaggers and fascists. And the ones in the Irish Free State are the worst of all. You're sitting there licking the boots of loyalists who hate your guts and hate the Irish tricolour and hate everything Irish. You're not Irish people. You're just fucking Shoneen West Brit scum. Lairskris or fialery. Total destruction to traitors, if you want a translation of that. Peshkele, Peshkele. I shouldn't really go on about that, so I shall perhaps round it up now and say I hope to Christ these people who were arrested do not get incarcerated. I wouldn't wish that on them anyway. They're good, well-meaning people, and I give them my support. I'm not going to say any more about who else I'm supporting because I'm not fucking giving you bastards an excuse to arrest me. Golf, suas, or fian. Imi sa fuck. Agus lishin. Tam here, dul awalya. Even though I am home already, I'm going home. No, I'm going. I'll leave you with that sentiment, and I will say Slangafol, Canadian Boherlib Galair, Saoirse Gajo, agus Saoirse don Palestine.